Welcome back. You're watching Siasa Fiesta here on Morning Prime, tail end of the program right now. And I know we were discussing a raft of issues, one of which also is electoral reforms. Before I took that short break, David, you on to something. I just wanted to give him maybe a minute to wind up on it, because we want to also look at what is on page 10 of the Daily Nation. If my director also may pick up on this as well, we shall be discussing this momentarily. Yes.
Yes. You know, my issue was just that I think we need to get over with conspiracy theories about elections. That when you go to elections, you got this clear mind. It's actually us in Azimio. We were over the moon saying, Imenda. There was no chance for us losing the election. Then after that now, we've blamed everybody on earth, apart from ourselves. We even have done our own report called Whistleblower, authored it ourselves, published it, and now we are saying this is a whistleblower. We have to call this out, that if we are to build our institutions, we must respect them. These elections were very close. That's the truth.
Yes.
Someone won, someone lost. That again is the truth. We need to build going forward. We can't keep on delegitimizing every person elected in these elections. I think it's wrong, and I think we should. Agitation is okay, but we should not keep on delegitimizing those who are elected in this process. Because I'm so sure that if Raila had won the election, we won't have these conspiracy theories today. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Just don't use the word we, because you are not in Azimio. you are in Kenya Kwanza. So
I agree.
don't say we. You can't take ownership of what you don't know. And secondly, it is important, and this is a question that must be asked, to always remember that it's not a question of being in government. IBC was and always maintained that it is independent of everyone. So it's not a question of whether you're an NIS or whoever. Lastly, it is quite telling. Do you know the IBC has never come to disown the whistleblower's report? Not even in one respect. Why should they? Haven't. Because if it was false, they would say this is false, but they haven't.
They've kept mum.
Yes.
So everyone should go out there, bring their own numbers until IBC confirm.
Numbers. This is legitimate numbers.
There's nothing legitimate.
But do we have an IBC as we speak right now? We've had.
But first of all, the report came before Chebukati and his team left. That's number one. Number two, we still have the chief executive and what we don't have are the commissioner. And the chief executive always speaks for the commission.
The report
denied it.
The report came on the day Chebukati and his teams were leaving office. It was planned that way so that they don't respond to it. You know that? They had this whole thing planned out well. Then we planned that the day they're leaving office is the day we unleash this damning report. I mean, you can see through this very, in my opinion, amateurish plans to legitimate the rest of the election.
But still the report is there.
Which report, by who?
But the one who's saying that report was released. Which report are you alluding to?
If he today tells his driver or his bodyguard to do a report about what happened, then you have to take that line hook and sinker.
That was a whistleblower.
So why do you suspect that it was?
Whistleblower was an employee of one of the Azimio principals.
How would you surely?
I'm saying that on authority. All of that. The so-called whistleblower was in the pay of one of the Azimio principals. I mean, let's not.
But you don't have any scrap of evidence to actually.
There's no evidence in that whistleblower's report. If it was there, it would have been taken to court. Amolo knows.
No. It came later. And you see, if it was not true, nothing would have been easier for the IBC to come up and say this is not true for this and this and this.
And then it's bring another one up again, then this is not true. Everyone comes up with.
Because, if it was made up, by now you would have reported, because that would be forgery. It is not forgery.
It's been reported. It's being investigated by the police. You know that. It's being investigated. You know that DCI is investigating that report. I hope you know that too. That the DCI is on this matter.
The person who said that, I saw it on Twitter. That Tim George, whatever thing, he said that whatever data that he used could not be authenticated. And he also says that it could not be concluded that the elections outcome could be determined based on that data that he analyzed. So there are two levels there. One, to say that the data may not have been credible. Second, that it did not conclude that the elections were stolen. So
Right.
it's really hot here. And also, what was reported by the Independent in the UK is basically people who are trying to scout for work. And you know, when you are trying to market your company, you can say anything. So I honestly don't think, if for sure, as Mayo had credible evidence, if they had what they're calling ethical hackers, they would have been able to produce that evidence in court. What they relied on were logs of 2017, which were discredited.
All right. Okay. I think that will be opening another Pandora's box that we don't want to deal with right now because of time as well. I just wanted to ask you more, because I can see your face is being splashed everywhere. I saw you in Taifa Leo, today you're in the Daily Nation, amongst other legislators as well, who are tapped to be maybe one of the CSs. Are you privy to any lists that we do not know? Maybe you can link it to us.
You know, Isaac Mwaura is a very public person. So when you have a list where he appears, he's always like on top of it. When we didn't make it in the UDA nominations, big names, losses, Mwaura was there. When it came to cabinet secretaries, my name was all over. So all over. And then, let me just finish. PSS again, and I was in the shortlist. So for this one, for politics, until it is done.
Until it's done.
Yes, yes.
Okay, let me just pick the brains of Otieno, because he's just about to leave. First of all, the way the court has been toying and froing on this issue. First of all, it tells us it is unconstitutional. Then now it is giving, the green lighting to the president of the executive to appoint the CSs. What are you reading, you as a
few points
as a lawyer?
Here. Right from the previous administration, when Uhuru Kenyatta created the position of Chief Administrative Secretary, I opposed it. And I opposed it for two reasons. I opposed it because, in my opinion, it was unconstitutional. It was a way of bringing back the former assistant ministers. At a time, we had removed that position to control the wage bill by the executive. And we had controlled the number of cabinet secretaries, and we had removed the idea of assistant ministers. What they did, and what William Ruto has done now, is to respect the number of cabinet secretaries, but to create more principal secretary positions than the cabinet secretaries, which again is improper. Then, in addition to that, is to again come up with this question of Chief Administrative Secretary. It is still, in my view, unconstitutional. It is still, in my view, improper. What's more, it is not that the courts have said that you must appoint. The courts have said you can appoint. In terms of fidelity to the Constitution, William Ruto would have demonstrated that he respects the Constitution and the intention of the Constitution by not appointing Chief Administrative Secretaries. There's nothing Chief Administrative Secretaries do. They are not properly and formally recognized by the Constitution, except to find a way of balancing political appointees who did not make it. And if you look at the list, you will see there are very many people who vied and did not make. That's number one. Number two, and I've seen the names of many people, including my friend Isaac Mwaura here, I think is number 86.
He's shortlisted.
Yes, he's been shortlisted. And you know, Isaac Mwaura is like a cat with 9 lives. This is the only man I know who has been twice lucky. Was nominated by ODM to the National Assembly. Later he was nominated by Jubilee to the Senate. And even when he was supposed to lose his seat, somehow he still survived. So he's a man with many lives, and you can never know, he might just survive this one also. But the other thing about this list is, and I know for a fact, that this list is being published to hoodwink the public. They have already decided on who they are going to appoint as Chief Administrative Secretary. So by your name appearing here, you should not be so hopeful, because it's just a waste of time. Unfortunately, the Public Service Commission has become an appendage of the executive. They agree with the executive on who's to be appointed. And that's seeing anything published under the name of the Public Service Commission does not give you the confidence that that is now an independent commission that will make an independent decision. They will only take the names of those that they have been given by the executive. And unfortunately, that will be so of that page 10, where they publish the names of the candidates for CIS, and it is also so of page 11 where they published the shortlisted candidates for chair of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission.
Debal on this matter, you know,
I'm going to release Otene Molo is about to go, yeah? So, but you want to hear his remarks before you go?
Dono Molo wrote this constitution, and he knows that when he wrote the constitution, part of the team that wrote it, they said in Article 233 that the Public Service Commission can establish and abolish offices in the public service. And so what happened is that when the issue of constitutionality of this position came up, it was taken to court, it was argued. And the court only had a problem with the manner in which the former president had established this office without consultation and without following the law. So what this new administration has done is to follow the law. And as a public service commission, to establish this office normally as per the law. And so the Public Service Commission went out publicly, asked for public opinions and public participation on this process, and therefore this office is currently established constitutionally. I have my own opinion about whether it is necessary or not to have this office, which I will not talk about today. But this office as it exists now is established under the law. And that's why the courts have said you can go ahead and appoint. Number two is that this position, as you've seen, is a political position. And the person appointing will always have, in my opinion, always have their say in this kind of matters. And that's why you've seen the short list. And I'm certain that maybe in the next 2-3 weeks we'll know who is lucky and who is not lucky.
But the question is, even as Otunde is putting it, that the president can. This is what the court has pronounced itself on.
Yes.
He can.
Yes.
In light of the given circumstances that we're going through as a country,
Yes.
There's no budget. I mean, the coffers are empty right now. Do you think it will be the wisest way for him to pick up new CSs, or he can actually hold off this particular office? There is no hurry, so that this is another expenditure to run the offices.
This office
is
has already
another
been
dead hand
established.
of bureaucracy as well.
This office has already been established by law, and I don't see a reason it should not be filled. I mean, if it was good for Uhuru Kenyatta, why should it not be good for William Ruto? Why are we trying to, play by a different set of rules? Uhuru had it. In fact, he had it with all the law, and the court told him, yes, we'll allow you to have it up to this period, but we must make sure that it's regularized within this time. So why would it be bad under Ruto? And
But the question I'm asking is, he's talking about austerity measures.
Yes.
Here.
The president,
we are at a pinch, the
president believes,
where we are
the president believes that this position is important for him to execute his agenda for the country. And he's expressed himself as much that he believes that having this position will make the work of his cabinet ministers easier, so that they're able to execute the agenda easily. And I take his word from that.
So he should fill up the positions.
He's already filling them up.
Okay. I know Isaac couldn't really speak against it since he's on the list.
Let me first
you vouch for it.
Let me first give credit to Otene Abolo now that he's already left, because you see he is here criticizing manners, but he's really, as David Ocheng is saying, he's the one who made this constitution because he was in the committee of experts, and he himself orchestrated where I was amongst the 6 people who were given the first draft at KICC there, in the presence of Raila Odinga and Mwai Kibaki then. And we seem to be telling ourselves as a country, our pure presidential system does not seem to be meeting the needs of our type of democracy. That is why President Ruto is proposing that the official leader of opposition position be recreated and re-established in Parliament. And for me, I agree with him 100%. So if Raila Odinga, for example, in this case was the one who was elected by the so many people that he couldn't make it, and it could be you or me, maybe, we never know in future, then that person should have a seat in Parliament to, continue leading their people. Because it has not worked that they would fizzle out, because I think that was the aim, to stem competition. Then also, Honorable Cheng will tell you that it's difficult for a fellow member of Parliament to come and answer questions to a fellow member of Parliament on the basis of that he is a chairman of a parliamentary committee. Because basically they are not in the executive. And, sorry, the bell.
That's okay.
And then I was speaking to some former cabinet secretary, and he says the work is too much. Some of these colleagues of ours are just also telling us that it's very difficult to have. So it's not necessarily because I'm there, but you need. If you remember, even when we had the first constitution, there were people who were called parliamentary secretaries, basically deputy ministers. And in any democracy, they are there so that they can be able to answer questions to Parliament, can be able to attend functions that the minister is not able to. Basically, it's like having, now the situation we're having currently is like having a president without a deputy. So a minister should have somebody who he or she can delegate to, and also somebody who can continue propagating the government policy, public policy, in various fora. So that is lacking because you have one person, there are only 22, the cabinet has been capped. And if you remember, during President Moi's time, I think Kibaki was the last one, under the Grand Coalition, we had 44 ministers. And then we had about, under Moi, if I remember, because Kibaki, I stand to be guided, there were about 75 assistant ministers. 75, imagine. So the work that was being done by about 120 people or thereabout is being done now by only 22. It is impossible. Now, President Uhuru had 37 CASs. President Ruto actually desired to have only 22 as well, so that you minimize the numbers. But it may be a little bit more because 37 is still fair enough, because it's even less than the state departments, because the state departments are now 52, I think, if I'm not wrong. So if you have 37 or 40 or thereabout, you still be able to help so that these individuals can answer questions in Parliament, can represent the minister, so that also you also have the diversity of the country. There are groups that feel that they were not really represented in cabinet, and they feel that they need to be so. And also, Debal, let's also face it, the people who have served in Parliament as governors or whatever other positions, they carry with themselves a wealth of knowledge that they can also help in building the country. So it is not an idle talk, and it really, really helps.
But it doesn't have necessarily to be a CS's job. We can have advisory councils for some of these people, advisory panels.
You see, I still want to take you back to the idea of having a deputy, a minister with a deputy. It is a practice the whole world over. Councils exist. For example, there's a climate change council that I can see somebody has going to go to stop it. There will be another council on maybe transport. There are those ones that not president, sorry, I beg your pardon. Ababu Namwamba, Minister for Sports, appointed the various artists, Talantahela. There is also the National Lottery that my good friend Dennis Tumbi is sitting on. So there are many of those councils that have always existed, but they cannot substitute the fact that you need your principal assistant, even for you, Debal, in this program. You have a producer. You have somebody who helps you to make it up so that the thing works. So the PS is an accounting officer. He is managing all the staff of the ministry, the thousands that there are. He is managing the money. The minister is also very busy with the cabinet and policy issues. And you are needed everywhere. You cannot be ubiquitous, So there is somebody who is there to assist. And I think there are very many able hands that can do that job. But the prerogative of who to sit where and how lies with the president. It is him who knows. And also remember, when you join government, really you inherit hundreds of thousands of people. It's only really at the top that you come with your critical mass of people who then help you to execute your agenda. People who have worked with you the journey and who understand your vision, who are with you in the trenches, who can really, push you. Because if you are alone at the top, it's lonely at the top. You may not be able to execute. And the Swahili people, Swahili adage says, "Kidole kimoja kinywi chawa." So it's also a question, because right now as we speak, who are the people with the president that maybe were with him? It's the cabinet, then the PSS, and then the board chairman, that one or two there, then that's it. So CSs are very important. And for President Uhuru to have recognized that they were important, I don't think he was just looking for people to reward politically. For example, let me take the example of Ababu Namwamba. He really, really did a very good job in foreign affairs. If you look at David Osiani, another very good young man who did a lot of good work at industrialization. Rachel Shebesh quite really tried an agenda with Professor Kobia. And you can mention others that maybe I may not highlight, but it is a very integral position in the governance of our nation.
Right. No. The point we made here, Debal, is there seems to be a meeting of minds in terms of how far we've come with implementing the new constitution. Now it's an old constitution, now more than 10 years old. And if, for example,
for a revamp as well.
If you went back, for example, to BBI, and the proposals there, and then you look at the letter that the president written to Parliament. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes.
The memorandum. And there seemed to be a meeting of mind that, one, there should be a more effective way of ensuring that ministers respond to Parliament real time. We don't have that method now. Now, whereas we are going to change our standing orders to allow the ministers to come not to Parliament, but to come as guests of Parliament, the BBI was proposing, let's have a hybrid. Appoint some from Parliament, appoint some from outside Parliament. But once appointed, they become official members of Parliament. Is it not time to think about this, to avoid these kind of untidy situations? Why don't we just go back and say, yes, we want our ministers in Parliament? Let me tell you, I was presiding last week on the floor, and the Honorable Farah Mali gave us this story, that when he was Deputy Speaker, Kibaki was President, one afternoon, he suspended 8 ministers from the House. Reason? They had brought unsatisfactory answers to the floor. They had not responded to members' queries on time, and they were suspended for the rest of the week. Now our ministers saunter into our committee rooms, lecture us as members of Parliament. Since you can't do this to me, I can't answer this, and there's nothing we do to them. That's how far we've come with accountability and oversight in Parliament. You saw some time back the Minister for Interior telling Parliament that there are things they could not do to him, that he could choose which committees to go to and which ones not to go to, because there's no sanction system for it. If a minister sat in Parliament, it means that if he doesn't do what we require to be done, then there are sanctions. How do you sanction a minister now? We cannot every time want to impeach a minister. How many times will you impeach? There must be a way of dealing with, executive in a more radical manner that ensures that accountability is done and held on real time. And so the agreement that we need, at least ministers responding to issues in the Parliament, is across the board. Is it not time then we opened up a constitution and said the following things are important for us? Let's have ministers coming to Parliament, coming from Parliament, so that we avoid this thing of members having to resign. We've just had 3 by-elections 3 months ago. People resigning so that they could join the cabinet for no reason at all. And so I believe, even this position we're discussing now, the CAS, it won't arise if ministers came from Parliament, because then we'll have that sense that in Parliament and executive will be dealing rightly. Because today, there's even an office that is set up with a PS called Parliamentary Liaison, kind of Parliamentary PS that is dealing with that. The reason is that there is no proper way of oversighting the executive. It's frustrating, Debal, if a member for Ugenya, I'm chairman of a committee, the Honorable Mwaura, as member of Parliament, asks a question on a matter that is very important in his constituency, a road, or a bridge, or some emergency, something has happened in the constituency. We can't ask direct to the minister. We ask a question to the committee, then the committee that then calls the minister, who then comes to the committee. These cities are not even televised. No one knows what goes in there. Then after that, the committee then writes a report that is brought to Parliament. There's no way of asking follow-up questions to the minister on the floor. So if a committee chairperson brings a report to the House and there are issues that arise from this report, how do you get answers back?
So the follow-up questions will go back to the committee. You summon the CS again, and then the vicious cycle continues.
Yeah, so yes, we have a new constitution, but we've had time to learn. And by the way, we had Tava Musimi led a committee that audited this constitution and gave Parliament a report on what needs to be done 10 years later. Tava Musimi at that time was the chairman of the budget committee. But he worked with the Auditor General, we worked with the team that told us some of the things that are working and some of the things that are not working. I think we just need to agree. And I don't think we need to fear a referendum. If some of the changes we are proposing require a referendum, we can agree and say, yes, this has not worked, let's make it work. And we go to a referendum and have some of these things.
Allow me to take a short break, because I think those are pertinent issues that you do raise. Are we also due for an audit for this constitution? And the question that I'll also just leave you to ponder on is the fact that the president is raising this memorandum, directly writing it to the Speaker of the National Assembly. Is that the way the structure should be? Can the president actually write directly to the National Speaker of Assembly with a memorandum? And again, you talk about the CSs answering to Parliament. I thought the standing order was meant to be amended so that we could have the CSS now speaking directly on the plenary. Right, we'll take a short break. We'll circle back. We'll answer that. We'll talk about it.
KTN News. Get the whole story.
Yanapotokea kila mahali katika kila pembe ya Kenya, tunahakikisha kuwa tuko pale kukupa dondoo mubashara.
Yomba anachomeka gari hayowezi ingia.
Kiswahili kitaendelea kwa misingi yake.
Hapa tulimpatia 86%.
Najua sasa hapa tumekutia gold, hakuna kitu kingine.
Vikosi vyetu vya wanahabari viko kila mahali kuhakikisha kuwa hupitwi na lolote linalofanyika.
Kaunti ya Taita Taveta niko katika kituo mojawapo ambacho.
Usikose kutazama yanayojiri kila siku ya Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa.
Clement Masombo,
Tobias Chanji.
Kwa kwangu Elvis Kosgei, sina la ziada.
Upgrade your DSTV package to enjoy all the content you love. That means if you're on Access and you upgrade to Family, you get boosted to Compact. If you're on Family and you upgrade to Compact, you get boosted to Compact Plus. And if you're on Compact and you upgrade to Compact Plus, you get boosted all the way to Premium.
Na unazubai hivi tu mtaani, si upite na mita uwe mshindi. Cheza Instamita na unaweza jishindia hadi mita 10 papo hapo bila ngoja. Game yenyewe ni rahisi sana. Bonyeza *239# sasa ushiriki. Usizubae bana. Cheza Instamita leo upate nafasi ya kujishindia mamita. Over 18s only. Gaming is addictive. Play responsibly. This message has been authorized by the BCLB. License number 880.
KTN News. Get the whole story.
All right, holding the tail end of the program right now, Siasa Fiesta holding court with David Ocheng, Member of Parliament for Ugenya. Also, we have Isaac Maura, who is immediate former nominated senator. Otinda Molo has just left. He's got some commitment elsewhere. We continue pace with the conversation that we're just having right now, that the CSS will be appointed, green lighting from the courts. We have a senior council still maintaining that it's still unconstitutional, despite the fact that the courts have made their pronouncement on it. And the president has now the choice. When he's talking about austerity measures and these positions, we know what budgetary allocation they'll also entail. In light of what we're going through, can he hold? Because the courts has said he can. The operative word is he can. He can hold it off for a while until the situation in the country stabilizes economically, or you can do it right away. And this is the question that we are pondering on also with David Ocheng. Before we took a short break, you'd raised the issue of the president writing a memorandum, and I was asking you, first of all, was it in order, him as a president, to write directly to the Speaker of the National Assembly? Or he should have gone through the structures? We have the majority leader through those channels, instead of him directly going to the National Assembly.
They actually wrote to both the speakers to start with. He wrote both to Speaker of Senate and Speaker of National Assembly, and there's nothing wrong with it. He didn't write to them with a bill or an act of parliament that he wants to be passed. No.
But I heard it from the floor of the House that that was not in his place to do so. There are structures within, parliamentary system that should be followed.
No, I don't think so. There's nothing in our structures that require that when the president communicates to us, he has to do through the minority leader or through the minority whip. No, he can speak to the speaker directly anytime he wants. And you know, for example, that every now and then, if the president has a communication or something that he wants to pass to Parliament, he writes the speakers of the Senate and the National Assembly. That's the procedure. He doesn't write through or to the majority leader. No, he writes directly to the speaker. For example, saying I've nominated the following to be CSS, or I've nominated the following to be the Council of Climate Change. He writes directly to the speaker. He doesn't write to the majority leader or minority or minority whip for that matter. And so he was perfectly in his place to write. People have been saying that, oh, the court said that, you know, because Uhuru Kenyatta started the BBI was said to have been wrong. The president is not proposing, in the sense of the word, a change of the constitution. He's only inviting Parliament that, could you discuss these matters and see whether they merit your consideration. That's what he says in his letter, that I want us to engage in dialogue on whether these issues that I raise would merit your consideration. And since last week, we've been actually discussing that memorandum. We'll be discussing the issues that are raised, the one-third gender rule, the NGCDF, the oversight, and I think the four matters. The NCGDF, the one-third gender rule,
the opposition.
The ministers coming to Parliament to answer questions, accountability, and the fourth one that I forget. I remember it and tell you just now. And I think it's a legitimate way of going about it. Let's have a discussion. Let's not ram it down Kenyan's throats. If Parliament thinks this is important, then this was going to happen. The majority leader or many member in the majority or in the minority would then come up with a bill on these issues. This bill would then go through the usual manner of processing a bill to change the constitution. If it requires a referendum to be done, it will be done. So as we speak, the president has not proposed any changes to the constitution in a manner properly so-called. It's only in very debate, which we are doing. We did it last week. I think even this afternoon we'll be going on with this. But it's important to note, like I said earlier, that there was a committee chaired, and it was funded by taxpayers' money at 80 million Kenyan shillings, that audited this constitution in 2015 and gave out a report on things that are working, things that are not working. I think there's almost consensus that the things in this constitution that need to be changed, we just need to agree the manner of going about them, have an all-encompassing process that involves everyone else, and then we proceed. This is what I believe.
All right, as of now, the issue that also is being raised, and I think it really is torn between the presidential system and the parliamentary system, where you're talking about these particular CSs or the CS, the cabinet secretaries, appearing before Parliament. Yeah. Let me just go back, because I think you didn't really clarify that. I thought, and you sit in the Standing Orders Committee, yes. I thought you were to amend the Standing Orders so that the CSs will be, or the CSs will be appearing before Parliament. Yeah.
There's a committee in Parliament called Procedure and House Rules Committee. And under that committee, and I sit there, but the Speaker chairs that committee, we set up a subcommittee, which I chair, to work on the modalities on ensuring that we change standing orders to enable ministers to come to Parliament to answer questions. We've done our report. I think it's going to come to Parliament in the next 1 or 2 weeks, proposing the manner of doing so. Because as you know, the CSs are not members of Parliament. And so they cannot come to Parliament as such. Because, Parliament is defined under the Constitution to consist of 290 members of Parliament from constituencies, 47 women MPs, and the nominated ones. The CSs are not among those ones. And so when Parliament sits with the CSs as part of Parliament, then we are not considered properly. And that's why in the proposals that we're making, we're going to set aside a place in the Assembly where they can sit, not as members, but as people who have come to answer questions. And that is a very important point to be made, that when they become to Parliament, they're not becoming there as members of Parliament or as forming part of proceedings. No. They'll only be coming to answer questions. And this is born out of Article 153 that says that ministers will attend Parliament committees to answer questions. Now, committees are basically part of Parliament. Without main Parliament, there are no committees. So if Parliament decides that this time around you don't want CS to go to committees, want it to come to us directly, then it can do so under that particular article of the Constitution, and that's what we are doing. And hopefully in the next 2-3 weeks, once we pass standing orders, they will start coming to answer questions for the floor. And you know, the frustration that we've had is this. Explaining to you that if our member of parliament and, you know, Honorable Maura is also a member of parliament, is chairing a committee, have an issue in Ugenya. I told you about a bridge or some hospital or some emergency. I have to come to the floor, ask a question. The question then has to be referred to his committee, which then has to summon the minister at a date. We say, and summons have to take 7 days. So he comes before this committee. Then I'm asked to go attend that committee, ask the question afresh to the minister before the committee. He issues the answers. Then the committee prepares a report, which then it brings back to parliament. It takes almost 8 weeks, sometimes even 12 weeks, to get an answer. Having ministers come into parliament to answer questions is going to be instantaneous. You can ask follow-up questions. As currently, where a member of parliament answers another member of parliament's questions because he asked, he summoned a minister, it's not instantaneous, it's not even effective. And so, our Katiba is good, but there are areas that are not working for us. It's not promoting effective and efficacious accountability and oversight of the executive.
Right, thank you. So you think this is a good time also we should have a constitutional audit? Because I think all these kinks that we are fighting with, or we're trying to iron out, it's born out of the fact that we are a hybrid constitution, borrowed heavily from United States, borrowed heavily from South Africa, from UK. So there are patches here that needs, like what you're talking about the CSS as well now, it needs to have an amendment. Just briefly on your side.
Yeah, I think about a parliamentary system, in my humble submission, would have been the best. And there seems to be a trajectory that seems to suggest that those who went the parliamentary way may have done better as in moving their countries forward. You talk about India, you talk about New Zealand, you talk about Australia, and you can go on post-colonialism. And I held the view even in 2010.
Yes.
But then the parliamentary system can only work if then you also have equitable representation in terms of the members of parliament, because there is a disproportionate representation. Some have got so many people, others have got few. So that needs to be recalibrated if at all parliamentary would work. Otherwise, it would actually disadvantage huge populations. But then coming to your question about whether we need an audit, for sure, Parliament has become very ineffective. Parliament in this constitution, now that I'm not a part of it, is a very powerful institution, by the way. In fact, I think they mimic the Congress of the United States. But I don't think Parliament actually realizes its power here, or somehow it may have been emasculated by the fact that this power is shared by the sponsoring executive because of the ruling party, coalition, and all of that. Now, in the last Parliament, Speaker Muturi tried to introduce a committee of general oversight so that ministers would come and answer these questions. But then he was countermanded by the executive saying that he wants to chair a cabinet. Can you imagine? So he abandoned that. And then Parliament, both the National Assembly and the Senate, which I've been privileged to serve, introduced something called Committee on Implement. What is it? What is it called?
COSC.
No. It is Implementation Committee. So that this committee follows. The National Assembly has got committee on implementation, that after you have resolved resolutions of Parliament, are they being implemented by the executive? Again, is the most ineffectual committee. Because by the end of the day, members of Parliament, will they actually be working on their constituency matters, whether they are directly elected or women rep or special interest groups? Or will they be monitoring the executive to see whether the resolutions of Parliament are... And so therefore that disconnect makes Parliament not really to have a say in the matters of public affairs. Because I remember even asking one minister, and then he was telling me, why are you coming to lie to us? But he said, you taught us. But when you are made to be accountable, for example, maybe in the standing orders, Honorable Cheng, you can introduce that even a minister can be suspended from appearing before Parliament if he's not doing his work in a satisfactory manner. Suspension from coming to Parliament, that is a good sanction, because then you'll appear before Cabinet and the President, the appointing authority, will ask you, why is it that you've been suspended? So it actually, casts a spotlight on you when you're not effective. I really hope and believe, because that will actually make ministers to know that they actually work for the people. Because there has been this argument that these are technical people because that's why we wanted to differentiate between politicals and technicals, if we can call them that way. But then it has not really reflected. When you are an elected member of parliament, when you have been in parliament, when you have actually looked for votes, you have the pulse of the people. You feel them. You understand why certain matters are urgent. But when you purely interpret things from a technical point of view, it's an ivory tower. Sometimes you're removed from reality because whatever may look procedural and right to do on paper may not resonate on the ground. And that is why you need political, acumen in terms of handling matters. So I think that is what we seem to be lacking in this whole dispensation. However, it is also true that if we succeed in having cabinet secretaries going to parliament to respond to questions, and maybe even CASs, because they will be deputizing the ministers, it will introduce a new jurisprudence. It will introduce a new way of doing things. Because remember, we are trying to craft a system of government that suits our needs as a country. And it is true, we borrowed even from various countries, including Germany. That mongrel kind of thing has produced something that doesn't seem to sit very well. For example, I hold the view, and I want to reiterate here, that we have evolved. A small country like ours cannot afford 47 counties. It may bring development to the people, but at some point, I strongly believe we may have to reconsolidate, so that then we can leverage on our resources, if at all. Maybe 20, 30 years from now, I'm sure that will be a conversation. However, I believe that this will really, really help, so that the chairman of a committee can be left with the work of oversight. So that then they are not also seen to be, at some point we're even joking with the chairman in the 11th Parliament and 12th Parliament that they actually need to be given a desk at the ministry and an office where they will actually be meeting. And also it will reduce what we call rent seeking, where for you now to appear before Parliament or to seek favors, you have to see a minister. When the minister comes there, he will be able also to feel the pulse of the nation, because the Parliament is really where you feel what is happening and respond accordingly and get to directly engage with members. One of the things that also has been a challenge in this system is where MPs are actually complaining, both the senators and MPs, that they cannot access ministers. But then this constant interaction will enable them now also to be able to access them, so that the needs that are felt on the ground can easily reach where it matters the most, So it is really a welcome move, and I don't think we should just be dogmatic about is it pure presidential or pure parliamentary. We borrow from the best, if at all we think so. But remember, even their own experiences are nuanced based on their own, history. Some of them is because they are largely homogeneous societies. So then whatever system they adapted would work well. But in a very heterogeneous, multicultural society, I still hold the view with the proper right kind of ratio for representation, so that you are able to leverage on representation of the smaller communities with the bigger, highly populated, densely populated areas, then parliamentary will still be the best. For sure, even when you look at our system of governance, we have introduced something called countyism. So nowadays, when you look at appointments, they are following counties, not even tribe, Is this county, so that has changed the dynamics of a country. It has broken us down into smaller units for purposes of projecting what is considered to be national. And in the same case, therefore, we would want to imagine that there will be better, more enriching conversations when ministers are put on the spot, so that they can also develop expertise in terms of how they respond to questions of the people. Yeah.
Currently, ministers think they're only responsible for the committees they appear before. And they don't care about the rest of Parliament. Because there's no time they interact with the rest of Parliament. If you're Minister of Environment, you only care about how many members are in the Environment Committee? There are 19. Who are they? Blah, 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 blah. So you don't care about the rest of Parliament. Because there's no way you're going to interact with them. It's a very weird situation. And that's why you've seen ministers not doing well, in my opinion. Some places, people don't even know who the Minister for Environment or for Lands is. Reason? There's no way of them interacting with the public. Yeah.
So we all agree in agreement that the Constitution is due for an audit. Yeah. What steps then does it take, you as legislator? Is it to hold, first of all, maybe a national conversation on constitutional audit? And what will be some of the salient things that you've seen so far, harking back to when we promulgated this Constitution, and now there needs some overhauling, we need some tinkering?
I think the letter that wrote by the President, it tells you something, that the question we ask, a very important question. What manner or what form should a review take? Before we had the CKRC, the guy-led commission that was later shared by, I think, somebody else, that led to the review of the constitution. So we have come this far, and the court said that under the constitution, the only two ways of changing the constitution. One is popular initiative, another one is parliamentary. So the popular initiative is where any other Kenyan comes up with proposals. Remember, we've had a Kuru court coming up with proposals on changing the constitution, that kind of a thing. Or a parliamentary one, where, for example, this proposal made by the president, plus others because on the floor now we have two other proposals to change the constitution. One to entrench the CDF and put NGCDF, put NGAF into constitution. I personally had one before, the one for changing the date of the elections. I remember Parliament can come and put proposals, and then it goes that way. What I personally believe is that we may need a more broader format, where, say, Parliament probably can come up with a law or a committee that would then receive views from across the country, from across the political divide, so that it's not seen to be one-sided. Remember, part of how the BBI was framed was not that the things there were very bad. It was just because it was framed as a political issue. And then it was meant that you either are for us or against us, whether you agreed or not. So the BBI ended up not being an issue about the change of the law, but about a political position. Are you for BBI or are you against BBI? If you ask what is BBI, none of those who are asking those questions will tell you what is in BBI. They're just like, oh, not support BBI, mapana. Who you say BBI, who in BBI? And it ended that way. So we need, in my opinion, a broader, more inclusive way of looking at it. And probably the best way would be to have a committee of parliament with same number of MPs from both sides, minority and majority, being in charge of that process. And then we can look at all the changes together so that you don't have piecemeal. Dibal with his, Moro with his, and myself with mine. No. You should have a process where all these things are brought together. We open up the constitution and say we're going to have a mini conference where we look at all this. And when we do a referendum, you go to a referendum that is not charged politically. We won't go to a referendum where we are agreed that this is it. Those who are for will campaign for, those who are against, but not based on this very divisive politics like the way you saw in 05 and in the BBI process.
Right. Okay, let's just get also our headline thoughts. Lastly, for you, the same question will be served. Do you think, what are some of the salient points that we should be now looking on? He says, of course, a committee will be the best way to go about it in Parliament. For you, what are some of the critical things that we need to change as a country
in the Constitution?
In the Constitution.
I think, I first and foremost to reiterate, yes, I think if we were to do an overhaul of the Constitution, I would prefer a parliamentary system, personally. I think that would really help so that then for you to be elected as to be appointed as minister, it's because then you are aligned to the leadership of the ruling, the person who is the prime minister. I would also want people to vote for parties, not individuals, so that then parties then have lists of members of parliament, like the way they do in South Africa, so that then you have more national political parties that are more cohesive. For me, that I think would be a better way, and also so that the political parties really get their true share of the votes that they get, because sometimes there are some votes that don't really quite count, because then we vote for individual parliamentary. So there's a model in the UK, there's a model in South Africa. I don't know which other jurisdiction does vote for parties. And also, that will also help even presidential candidates, their votes to be more clear. So because you vote for the party, the head of that party then becomes. It will also strengthen that that person is subject to the party. Right now, we have the situation where parties are owned by individuals. That's why they keep on collapsing. I have been a victim of shouting out when they are not functioning properly. It will actually institutionalize those political parties. I also think we need to come up with a better way of sanctioning governors to be more accountable on unsourced revenue, because a lot of it is lost there. And also, we've not been able to deal properly with issues of seepage and leakages. People come into government to enrich themselves. And because our electoral system is highly commercialized, is highly monetized, you can only serve so much, because then people are still thinking about how will I win the next general election. And the only language that the masses seem to understand nowadays, for sure, at the bar, is how much they get, because it's transactional, it's not relational. So I wish we can get that right. Of course, it takes a lot of years to achieve that, but I still believe also we can move forward that way, so that we also build a proper national culture, a proper national identity that makes people to feel what it is. I was very surprised, Tebal, being in Tanzania about 2 weeks ago, and somebody stopped me, in Dar es Salaam, and saying that they watch us on this program, actually. So we don't know who we are speaking to when we are here. The same case happened to me sometimes back in Uganda. So I think we need to continuously populate, these conversations with futuristic ideas, because we never know how they can be picked and ending up in that kind of audit. But it is due. The only challenge is, and I must say this, the BBI process was shrouded with the personal interest. When we saw President Uhuru on a lorry after the death, the burial of Professor Magoha, we realized that he actually wanted to succeed himself, unfortunately. So we do not also want to have a situation where we change the constitution because of the personality of the day. Let it be well thought out. I think there are piecemeal changes, and I'm happy that the president has proposed, but it's actually up to Parliament to do it. They can reject the proposals. But maybe after about 20 years or so, implementing this constitution, there may be need to have another serious attempt at seeing what works and what is not working.
Right, thank you. Time not on our side. Let's just get your closing remarks.
No, thank you so much.
Yes.
I think
Briefly, 30 seconds. Yeah.
The work of building this country and building the nation is for all of us, in my opinion. And at a time like this, when the economy is bleeding and things are not looking right for everybody, but by the way, the hunger, the lack of school fees, the depressed economy is for everybody. It's not for Azimio or Kenya Kwanza. I believe that this is the time for all of us to summon our best instincts, our best ideas and thoughts to help those who have been given the power to govern well. I believe that trying to cause rebellion, trying to say you're going to go to the streets and this must happen now, just distract us from what's supposed to be done. I believe that we owe it to those that have been given the opportunity to govern to bring this economy back together.
Thank you. Thank you. Mheshimiwa, briefly.
I think
your closing remarks.
I would want to say that we have a great country. I am very happy that people do not seem to follow the issues of maandamano. They know that the government has not had enough time to work itself out, and I really encourage that we continue this way. We give the President William Ruto an opportunity to really serve this country and to get us out of the hole. Together, we can be able to make it.
Thank you.
And kudos to the progressive forces in the Nyanza region led by David Omoche.
My name is David.
Not Davis. David Omoche.
Thank you so much for coming through. I really do appreciate you coming through this morning. As a photo, thank you. Nonetheless, are you going to Mlolongo? Are you still circled back here? We thank you so much as well.
Now I know the way.
And we wish you well as well. Yeah, we wish you well with the CS
interviews.
Appointment. You've been shortlisted to. We will be praying for you. Next time when you come here, you come in the capacity of a CAS. Thank you so much for your valued company. You've been watching Siasa Fiesta. Thank you.